Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being the show we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Van Helsing. A very interesting episode. In this episode, we finally get to see what's basically transpired with Vanessa. Basically, she finds herself at this place called, I think it's Black Tech, is how you say that. I don't think it's Blake Tech. I'm sure it's Black Tech. But nevertheless, a lot of interesting information kind of gets brought up this episode. Granted, pretty much everything in the episode is pretty much subterfuge and lies, so it's hard to say 100% whether or not what's really true and what's not, what's like complete and utter bullshit. But it brought up some interesting things, which I'll kind of dive into. I'm not too surprised about the whole Abigail situation because I was like, oh, they're leaning towards her being her mom, but then it's like, I should figure something was weird. The fact is, because certain things didn't line up. The fact is that she was cutting that dude open, Martin, cutting him open, and she was so callous about it, just like, he was dead. And it's like, that didn't seem right to me. I mean, besides the fact of the matter is, it's a little fishy. I'm surprised Vanessa didn't bring it up, but it's like, when she kept saying like, well, are you sure he was dead? Are you sure it wasn't just Bruce saying that he was dead? Because the fact of the matter is, when it comes to this whole curing people from their vampirism, like when it comes to that, like her whole thing has only flopped once technically. But once again, Dylan was a weird exception, and Axel didn't work on Axel the way it normally would. Others, it's just a kind of immediate thing, and they're kind of normal and human. I mean, it's really hard to judge how long the whole process take. Like, Doc didn't take too long. Flesh took a while, but then again, he was locked away and probably screaming and no one heard him. Probably took him a while to kind of snap out of it and come back to it. But Axel's the situation where it's like, oh, they thought he died. So maybe that's just because Axel didn't have blood in his system. So it made the transition back a little weird and awkward. Kind of had to, quote unquote, like kill him first. But just that, plus just things didn't fit right, especially when she brought up the whole Scarlet situation. I was like, oh, so she didn't know Scarlet was alive. But it's like, obviously, their real mom would know that Scarlet's alive. Like, she's probably the one that helped orchestrate that whole situation. Because why would their mom not know about Scarlet? It's not like she's just gonna. It's like, oh, I remember Ted. It's like, I don't believe that. Like, I'm sure she orchestrated it with the people who took care of Scarlet, raised her as their own. Like, I'm sure that was all part of their mom Abigail's whole situation. So I'm trying to remember if her name was actually Abigail. I was pretty sure it was, but it's actually kind of sad because the fact of the matter is, like, probably when the time comes, Vanessa will know when it's really her mom, but she doesn't remember her mom's face because she was so young at the time. So that's why even the whole thing about Bruce took a little while for her to click, because she's like, he seems so familiar. And even I was like, what's up with that? It's like, it can't be, no, that had to be exactly. I was like, okay, so what's going on in this facility? Because it seems Bruce was initially hired because basically the government wanted a cure from vampirism. But the fact of the matter is, that shows you that took place in what, maybe like definitely like the 70s/80s. So it's like the government's known that entire time. Like, why do they know that? Because the way this conversation was making it seem like in this episode, like, oh, Vanessa's mom's the only one that really believed in the whole vampire thing. So she kind of seemed a little crazy. She's the only one that believed. But for the government to have set up this whole situation, they had to have known something within of it. I mean, all these experiments they're performing and everything, like the fact is there's a file on Dimitri. There was that, I forgot they did have Dimitri locked up in the farm, hence why they had the file on him. So they did know well in advance that vampires exist. But it's like, I'm curious how that all happened. Maybe like Vanessa's mom ended up capturing a vampire to prove it or something. I don't know. Like, how did that all start? Because I doubt Dimitri was the first one, but he was probably one that just kind of helped prove, like him being as old as he is, probably worked as a good test subject. I mean, there's so many things about that. What's also interesting too is by the end of the episode, obviously, like, her quote unquote mom ends up shooting her. But then I was like, do they not know she's going to get back up? I mean, she's died before, and I was like, right, they don't actually know about her healing capabilities, because everything they know, because even everyone was shocked when they saw how Vanessa cured Martin. She bit him. So it makes the situation, it seems like they don't, like, they probably know, they've heard the rumors, but even then they're not fully sure what she's capable of, because the last time they probably saw her at all was when she was a little girl, and her mom was very protective, obviously, so they never really had a chance to really study her. They might have, but it seems like this whole situation is like, there's a dormancy to this whole situation. So even if they tested her as a little girl, it might not have been active in her DNA, because it turns out there's this whole situation. Once again, we have to take everything with a grain of salt, because like, it's hard to say what's real and what's fake in this situation, because it's like, oh, your mom, the reason why you became the way you did is because your mom accidentally got a special vampire's DNA. It's like, how does that happen accidentally? I don't get that. Like, but it's like, I think it's kind of true that whole, like, she didn't realize she was pregnant at the time and they became, because she was there initially helping try and find a cure for vampirism because she was told about vampires, it being a family thing and everything. But I'm still curious, like, what got her to that point, to the point that the government would believe her and everything. So, not unless this whole Van Helsing thing and the government kind of goes a lot further back. Maybe this whole group isn't actually even a government-funded group. This whole black tech, it might be someone else entirely funding this, someone who knows about. I mean, we see that Bruce has kind of got his own situation going on because basically he stumbled across longevity as kind of his main motive behind this. He's saying it's also about curing humanity, but it's like, no, you're in it for yourself. It is kind of interesting because that whole aspect of like singling out certain aspects of a vampire and transferring it to a human, because Vanessa kind of got the more positive sides to a vampire. Like, she can drink blood and get buffer. She had superhuman strength, heightened senses, but she doesn't have the affliction to the sun, which obviously is like the reverse of Dylan, which I'm still so curious to find out like what that really was that doctor really did to her. It seemed like he basically possibly took her Van Helsing DNA and like rewired it a little bit, because about that whole situation, I guess it also explains why Scarlett's the way she is, because it was like it was always dormant in her DNA. Because I was like, oh, the one they experimented on was Vanessa, but it's like if their mom got infected at that time and she passed it on to them because she was pregnant at that time, it's laid dormant in them both. Just like Vanessa, it was never always active. There were certain aspects to it, like the whole like her kind of having anger issues type of thing. Like, it's always been there dormant, but it wasn't activated until she died. And for Scarlett, it didn't activate until Vanessa bit her. Because before I was like, oh, so did like Vanessa transfer it to her when she bit her, or was it like, because I surmised like it seemed like it was dormant, but I didn't know if it was like how that whole situation worked, because it made it seem like Vanessa was the only one that had the whole vampire thing going on, but it seems like Scarlett does too. But getting back to what I was bringing up earlier really quickly, I was bringing up the fact is that quote unquote Abigail shot her, and it's like, oh, they're like, we don't need you anymore because we have Scarlett, but they don't know about her healing factor because that whole situation hasn't come up. Like, subsequently, since being there, she hasn't gotten hurt, so they wouldn't know about that because once again, they don't know all her full capabilities. So that's going to be a big surprise. It seems like they probably shot her in the head, but once again, she died before and came back. So I mean, to be fair, who's to say they actually shot her in the head? It could just been a situation. Well, I assume they did, but I think it is still that situation of, because it seems like her situation is different too, because it's like the blood in her system is that from an elder, which an elder is more powerful and stronger. Once again, kind of shows you why she's so, probably adds into the whole anger and why she has that like vampiric thirst and hunger, is because probably not just the whole vampire thing, but also because it came from an elder, which apparently like the whole conversation is like, oh, maybe they were the beginning, like elders were like the first vampires. Because it's like, oh, Bruce is treating this like a virus, but it's so much more. It's like, maybe it is. Like, it's like, is this an affection thing? Like, because the interesting thing about it is the show kind of takes a very science fictional approach to this whole thing, but it hasn't really tapped into like the whole fantasy element, because it's like most things kind of treat vampirism as like, I mean, not everything, but some things don't really go into details too much about it, but other things like use it as like a means of like, oh, it's like some kind of magic that originally created the first vampire, so it's more like a curse more than it is a virus. I don't know which approach they're going to go for. It seems like it's more, they're trying to understand it from a scientific angle, but I don't know if it's like more of a magical thing or whether it really is more like a virus, more like an ancient virus or something like that. Who knows? And kind of getting back to it really quickly, another thing that was kind of going through my mind is like, if she really was their mom, it's like, wouldn't she be special too? Cause wouldn't the whole elder DNA messed with her like it did? Like, it never came up in the episode, but I guess it's a situation of like, well, cause she was pregnant at a time, so all of the infection went to Scarlett and Vanessa. But it's like, I feel like there would be some residuals. Like, I feel like it'd be in her system, but maybe the moment she gave birth to the girls, it kind of got flushed from her system. Once again, the question is like, how was it by accident? Or was it a situation like, because I'm sure maybe like, their mom signed up for it because she's like, okay, I think this is going to be the end of vampires, when in actuality, the government had other plans for the whole experimenting, They make Vanessa kind of make her think like, oh, she was one of said experiments and whatnot, So whatever their plans are, like, once again, it depends on whether this is really government funded or this is like someone else at play here, which I kind of feel like it is. Because I mean, I don't know, because it seems like they definitely have ulterior motives. Because it's like, oh, if you were really all about curing, you wouldn't have tried to take out Vanessa. It's like, because they're trying to get Vanessa to go to the Elder because apparently they didn't get the answers they wanted. Like, it seems like they're making it seem like they're going after a cure, but it's like, no. Like, as if it was just a cure, I would think Vanessa's blood would be enough. But I mean, who's to say? Like, the situation hasn't come up to be like, oh, 100% if you just take Vanessa's blood into a syringe or something, stab it in a vampire, they're cured. It might have to be like a chemical concoction of like the combination of the blood inside of her system plus her Van Helsing genes that kind of creates the cure. Something like that. So once again, it seems like it's tailored to what Vanessa kind of figured out about Bruce. That basically he's trying to nitpick and try to pick what he can pull out from a vampire's DNA and give it to a human. In his case, longevity, because it's like, oh, what happens to me if I don't keep taking it? Will I end up dying? Or will he just grow old? But I guess they can't find anything in her because like the DNA inside of her, the elder DNA that's in her is kind of mutated. So it can't give them the results that they want. Like only way they can get the results they want is if they go exactly to the elder, who's the most powerful of all vampires. So their DNA is most definitely very different from other vampires, which does beg the question too, like what would happen to an elder that got cured? Would they even be possible to cure them? Because we do know that not all vampires can be cured, because some vampires are just so far gone in their state of mind that basically, because we saw it in season 1, that basically it kills them. So, and also another interesting thing kind of popped up in my mind about this whole situation. Like, I think, well, not just think, but this whole episode makes it seem like the reason why Vanessa is getting all these visions and everything is because she's connected to the elder, because it's his blood running through her veins. But the fact of the matter is, like, why does everyone else that she cures kind of get a little bit of that? Like, part of me is wondering, does she kind of pass on the virus? There's some of that vampiric aspects, not like the vampiric abilities and stuff like that. Certain traits and aspects transfer over. Do they kind of get diluted? Like, kind of like you have the elder being like a full vampire, and then you have Vanessa who's like half, elder vampire, and then when she passes it on to someone else, that half gets halved again, so it gets diluted, so they don't get the abilities, but they get the connection. Just because maybe the elders have like a psychic link attached to their blood, and so what that whole situation is. But it's like, I guess, maybe it's a situation of not only is the elder's blood transferred, but also Vanessa's, hence why they're connected to her. And I guess, like, the equivalency of, like, her biting Scarlet is that scream where it kind of just, like, activated, like, the sleeper cell that is her DNA that she's put into every vampire. I guess, like, this is me surmising a lot of this stuff. It's just fascinating to think about, like, really break down like what this could all possibly mean, because like I said, it's just interesting that the only people who haven't seen her, the elder in their head, is everyone else except for, I think Scarlett's seen it, but definitely Vanessa. So, but why no one else? They've seen the door and everything, but they've never seen the elder, and the elder's never talked to them directly. Maybe it's because of the whole psychic link in the blood thing, that he can choose exactly who he wants to talk to, and he only has his eyes set on Vanessa, so he's never bothered talking to anyone else because they're human now, and they're not the special ones she is, which he hasn't, to our knowledge, taught Scarlet yet, so. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I said earlier, there was like, how did you like mistakenly like get like vampiric DNA, like special vampiric DNA mixed with yours, and it's how do you get infected? And then I'm like, I completely forgot. Oh yeah, there's a whole angle of we still don't know who Vanessa and Scarlett's dad is because he's still an enigma. Then it's like, well, the accident could be the fact is, I'm kind of obviously leaning towards him being a vampire because of the whole line from Dimitri last season I brought up before, like, oh yeah, the moment your mom found out about who your dad was. So it's like he's most likely the elder, even more so reason why this particular elder keeps reaching out to Vanessa. Maybe at some point in time before like she handed them the key, she basically helped seal him away once again. Maybe she has powers too that we just don't know about. We haven't really gotten a good point of like intersection with their mom to see like who she is and really see what she's capable of. Like outside of those moments inside of the farm, that's about it. But it would make sense, like the whole accidentally getting infected thing is she didn't find out until she was pregnant, is because maybe at the time she didn't, she didn't know that he was a vampire. He had hidden it so well, which is like, how do you do that? Especially the way vampires look in this show. Then again, maybe it's a situation of because he's an elder, he can make himself look different, lose the vampiric aspects, which I'm also curious about. Are elders affected by the sunlight the same way I would assume he wouldn't be, because the fact is Scarlet and Vanessa aren't, but once again, that just could be mixed with the Van Helsing DNA. It's like, we still don't know, like, what's the division on that. So that could be the accident, or maybe it was like legitimately looking for a cure and she infected herself just to, it's like, oh, as a Van Helsing, maybe I have a stronger resistance to it or something like that. Maybe it was on purpose. Who knows? Like I said, all this is me kind of throwing out all these different things. We don't know anything 100% for sure. I'm also curious about that Historia Vampire book. I guess that's like a family heirloom that's kind of been passed down. Obviously, like, it was meant for as a gift from their mom to Bruce to be like, hey, told you vampires exist. There was 2 women in the book too, so I would assume that's supposed to represent Scarlet and Vanessa. I would assume that's a situation of like, oh, this is destiny in the making. Once again, kind of like, well, I said the show is kind of very science fictional, but there's like a fantasy element of like, no, this was how things were always supposed to be, that they're supposed to be the ones that kind of be the guardians. Once again, and it's something I brought up before about the whole like people that they cure thing. Like, it's almost like they're building an army of their own, like that they are connected, like they were always drawn. It's like they can always find their leaders. It's like these are generals always looking for their commanding officers in battle or something like that. That's immediately where my brain goes about that whole situation. So we only got a little tiny look into it. It doesn't seem like Vanessa even read the whole entire thing. So maybe she can leave that place, whenever she gets up. I'm curious to see what they do with her. They're probably going to try and dissect her, but I don't know. Maybe, hopefully she comes back to life before that even starts happening. So we'll see. Cause I'm also curious to see, like, she did get shot in the head. Like, what does that do to her? It's like, it might knock her out a little bit longer. It might take a little while. Like, I think as long as her brain isn't completely destroyed, or maybe it's the position, the bullet where she got shot in the head, maybe all that plays contributing factors into how long it would take her to come back, so we would just have to wait and see. Obviously, the groups are trying to find Vanessa, but now it turns out, obviously Scarlet doesn't have the key, and obviously Julius doesn't have the key because now Dimitri has the key, so that's not going to be good, especially if he runs into this group of people looking for Scarlet and he finds them first. He's most likely going to kill them. So, but they're looking for Scarlet. Scarlet and Axel are looking for Vanessa, as well as you have Doc with her own looking, and it's still like, what's up with the whole Lucky and Phil situation? I caught a little glimpse of the next episode. It seems like it is going to be dealing with Mohammed and Sam, which we're going possibly get a look at their past and obviously see where they are right now with everything. So I'm very interested in that, kind of find out where they came from and how they got to where they are now. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.